Awesome. Well, I am Michael Mann, the host of Planetary Health First, Mars Next, and I am super excited to have Vinay in. And he is really a pretty amazing dude, an awesome founder. We're going to be doing a lot more founder stories, founder to founder. And I would say with Planetary Health First, Mars Next, I am feeling those startup in the grind, building our company. So I'm not a founder raising capital, but we will have more founder to founder. And more importantly, most importantly, we got a founder today that's doing some really cool stuff. So, Vinay, before I get going too much, introducing yourself and talking, I mean, I'm so glad you're here. You are the co-founder, CEO of Bonfire Analytics. Just share a little bit about what about your journey in healthcare and being a founder of your company.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Michael. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast with you. And yeah, a little bit about myself. So I'm Vinay. I'm one of the co-founders here at Bonfire Analytics. My background formally is in mechanical and biomedical engineering. So I've always been passionate about healthcare and health tech, the intersection of healthcare and technology, essentially bringing new, tools, devices, therapeutics, to market. And, I was initially on the R&D side as an engineer. So after I got my undergraduate and graduate degrees at Duke, I went to work at Stryker, where still staying on kind of the R&D device design side. That was really exciting time for me to understand more about how a large medical device player operates, the kind of devices they already have on the ground, and how a lot of patient outcomes are affected by having these devices in the hands of physicians and patients. I found that after a while, I had more of a calling from the entrepreneurship perspective. And so that caused me to pivot more into digital health. So I've worked in early and growth stage digital health for the past few years before I founded Bonfire with my good friend from college. But I worked at a company prior to Bonfire called Round Trip Health, which is a patient transportation platform for hospitals and health systems. And that was actually my first pivot from being more on the engineering side to actually being on the growth side. So I was selling as one of the first growth hires into hospitals and health systems. And one of the things that really stuck out to me during my time there was, there wasn't a lot of data or insights to help me as someone who's on the sales side to sell more effectively to a hospital health system. It was very hard to understand who are my target accounts, how should I prioritize them, how do I reach them in the most effective way possible. So this was a lot of frustration that I felt, in that sales side, and realized that it's a more of a systemic issue where there are a lot of sales and commercials teams that struggle without having the right tools, the right data and insights to sell. And so, as you would have it, while I was thinking about this problem, I reconnected with one of my really good friends, Jaya Pokuri, who is my co-founder here at Bonfire. He and I actually went to college, so we were both Duke grads, and he went more into data science after college. So he worked for a few Silicon Valley startups, as a data scientist, and then he worked at SoFi, building out their AI and ML. So he had seen a lot of issues in terms of connecting disparate data sets that don't talk to each other. He'd already had a lot of interest in healthcare. So when we came together, it just was a natural complement of, having a foundational problem that we had both seen in different sides, and then coming together to build Bonfire, knowing that, with the right, data expertise and the right domain knowledge in healthcare, we could do something really cool. So yeah, that's kind of how Bonfire was born. And maybe I'll just end with the one-liner, but we're an AI-driven / analytics-driven sales intelligence platform for health tech companies. And our mission is to get, again, the digital tools, devices, therapeutics in the hands of patients, providers, payers faster than ever before.
And I'm not as smart as you guys. It sounds like you got some super smart team co-founder, but I think I get where Bonfire comes from. A bonfire is a community, right? You have something that's built smartly and cleverly that really does huge impact with combustion, but people around that, a community. Would that be kind of the play or not? Tell me.
Great. No, I love that you're asking or even touching on this topic, because I think whenever we get this question of like, how did you guys come up with the name? It's always a fun one. So yeah, a couple of things in terms of how that happened. One is we were thinking about a name that kind of had a light connotation to it. So, shedding light on new data and insights, right? That was kind of the theme. And then interestingly, the name Bonfire came up because it was actually, like you touched on, a community celebration in college for whenever we won a big basketball game, there would be a bonfire on the quad. And so it's kind of an homage to our time in college. And, also, it satisfies the other criteria of like shedding light. So that's how Bonfire Analytics was born.
Cool. I love that. And I also feel a deep connection. My grandfather he was a graduate of prior to Duke. It was it was called Trinity All Boys School. So
Oh,
he supposedly got his law degree. My dad's going to not on to 92. So I
wow.
haven't just definitively found that diploma, but I take my father's word for it. So anyway, there's a special thing there in my heart for you guys. And that school, which was just a little small school back in the day, is emerged into a premier Harvard-esque, whatever, or Ivy League-esque, let me just say. So that's awesome. So obviously you guys, part of that university was allowing you guys to be, finding each other at the right place at the right time to create that friendship, and hence Bonfire several years later has been born. But tell me more about when you were working in healthcare with Round Trip. I'd love to know more about that deeper, dive deep into that problem that you were finding.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think going back to my time at Roundtrip, like I mentioned, being one of the first growth hires, I think there was a lot of opportunity to put in place, structures, processes, how we should be going after the market, and understanding what our ideal customer ultimately was. And as we were going through that, one of the things that I think we were very good at was utilizing our experience in terms of sales conversations, how hospitals were reacting. There was a lot of dynamic kind of like pivoting of the product and the positioning based on what the market was telling us. But one of the things that I think we wish we would have had was more data on the size of the market. Who are they, hospitals or health systems really struggling most with patient transportation? I mean, we knew at that point on a high level that we see millions of missed medical appointments every year, with transportation being a primary barrier to care. And I remember there was a statistic we even cited: it leads to $150 billion of lost kind of value in terms of patient outcomes, in terms of avoided ED visits, readmissions, and things like that, simply because a patient wasn't able to get a ride to the doctor. Right? If they don't get a ride initially, it leads to a downstream effect. It leads to a worse outcome. So that I think anyone can understand that. But I think coming back to the data side of it, having had more data at that point in time, I think would have been really useful. And then even through, as we grew the company, we were able to grow, I would say pretty well during my time there. But it came up again and again. It's like, how do we find a scalable way to generate qualified leads? And there really wasn't a clear solution that we found. We did try out some of the larger, industry agnostic, sales solutions, but a lot of them, we found are not necessarily specific to healthcare. And, they do a great job for industries that are not healthcare, but healthcare is such a specific industry where data that is very, native to that industry is incredibly important. And so all of this was kind of, in the back of my mind in terms of when we were selling, how can we, again, size the market, build a pipeline of qualified leads. And, it kept coming back to like, man, if we had the right data, the right insights, it could have really moved the needle. Right. So that's kind of my experience, if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think of the I-Core program. That's a very well received program under the National Science Foundation for opportunity for, if you've been out of college for a certain amount of time or university, you have some really super cool moving the needle ideas, you go out there and do 100 some customer surveys, discovery surveys. And it seems like there's so many I guess you had that journey was kind of already organically taking place with your little skunk work at
Yeah.
your prior company that you were working on, Round Trip, you were getting that real time to man, you're scratching that, figuring that out. And tell me about that just from a founder journey. Like, how did you,
Yeah.
you don't seem like a gentleman that going to a school that you would go to that would tell me about that leap from entrepreneur to that risk aversion. And when did you tell us about that? That would,
Yeah, yeah. So I think the journey, yeah, it was really. I think there's a couple of things that went into the jump into being a founder. I think, like I mentioned, I realized early on that big corporate life, wasn't necessarily suited for me. I felt I was more at home in a fast-paced, tightly knit, dynamic environment where you feel like you're contributing day in and day out. You're building something that's valuable. So that's what drew me to Roundtrip, honestly, was that startup environment. And I figured that, if I were to join a startup and see its growth, that would really help me long term to think about founding my own company. So it was actually, there's a seed, that seed was planted in my head, even, long before, I even thought about starting Bonfire. The other thing I will say is I was part of a fellowship called Venture for America. And so after my graduate program, I joined that Venture for America, and it was a really refreshing kind of change of pace because I think a lot of college grads are drawn to maybe more traditional career paths like consulting, investment banking, medical school, law school, and those paths are really great. But oftentimes there's not as much of a clear structure for non-traditional pathways like entrepreneurship. And Venture for America seemed like a great fit for someone like me, where I wanted to be part of a community of like-minded folks who are also entrepreneurial in nature, who also are thinking about starting a company. So joining that program actually gave me a lot of confidence that one day that starting a company isn't as scary as as it could be. And yeah, it was interesting that that fellowship was what actually led me to join Roundtrip. And even to this day, I keep in touch with a lot of my friends from Venture for America, quite a few of whom have actually started their own companies. So it's been a cool experience, to say the least, to get into that. I should also add, I think there's a few other factors, right? It wasn't just about I'm going to start a company regardless. It's also about finding the right problem that you're passionate about, and it's also about finding the right people
Mhm.
to build a company with. And I think both those things also, for me at least, definitely clicked, because this was a problem that I'd faced being on the front lines of healthcare sales, doing a lot of the spray and pray outreach, sending 1,000 emails, getting 10 responses in one meeting. Always felt like data and insights could have really helped with that.
Yeah.
And then obviously, and in addition to the problem, Jaya being a good friend of mine and having a really strong data background, I think that was really, really, a positive signal for both of us to be like, hey, we can actually do something together where our skill sets are complementary. We already have, familiarity with
Mhm.
each other and have a similar spirit from an entrepreneurship standpoint.
Yeah.
So all those things I think clicked. But yeah, if you kind of rewind back, there was kind of a path in my head, at least, that I can look back and connect the dots in reverse. So
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah.
good to know. And now you're, as I've been talking with you're growing, you're hiring, you're building that culture, hiring slow, firing fast, doing the right thing. And we will be seeing each other at Health. That's exciting.
Yeah, really exciting, Michael. I feel like this year at Health, it's going to be really cool, because I think when we went last year, it was the first time we were still at that time raising, so we were still very, very early. And then since last year, we closed our first venture round, which was exciting. We brought on a few folks, and like you said, we've been hiring and building out the product and the team. And so going into Health this year, I think there's a lot of positive momentum, and we're excited because I think a lot of the folks that we want to meet with on the digital health, med device, health tech side will all be attending, and I think it'll be a great chance for us to just build more connections, understand more about healthcare innovation, and also it's not too shabby that we get to see Busta Rhymes performing too.
I know. I think they are always doing that. They just so good. Like right when you think you're gonna bite the cake, they add another layer to it. Like I mean,
Yeah.
they just get every different way in between. Like, I guess Halle Berry. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of starstruck that they're getting her with some, I guess she's involved with some startup or just women's health. Should know more, forgive me, but they have so many layers, you know, it's so hard to, but Buster Rhymes, right? Who
Yeah.
knows? They might even have something else before you land. But anyway, tell us a little more about at a like who if I was a company, you know, and I'm having the sales problem, what in healthcare, what tell us a little more, kind of your so you know what you guys are doing, and just so you know how I could know a little more.
Yeah, so I would say if you're a digital health or medical device company, one of the things that we try to understand is like how are they currently selling, right? How are they building their commercial strategy? How are they building sales territories? How are they finding their target accounts? And a lot of times, what we find in that discovery is that there's not really a scientific way that's being done or a data-driven way that's being done. And so what we provide is the right type of insights to help build that strategy, and also get to market as efficiently as possible. Maybe jumping into our data itself, I think that'll probably offer some context. So we have three buckets of foundational data. So the first is we have 300 million lives worth of all payer medical and prescription claims data. And for those who don't know, claims are essentially when you go to the doctor and let's say you have a diagnosis or a procedure, the provider would then submit the claim to the insurance in order to get reimbursed, right? So a lot of times we might have, let's say, commercial insurance like Cigna, Aetna, et cetera, but older folks might have Medicare coverage. So what we have is essentially coverage across all different payers, so traditional Medicare, Medicare Advantage, commercial, Medicaid, and we have it both on medical and prescription claims. So that's obviously very relevant for a lot of digital health med device companies that are dealing with a specific patient population. So they want to know, where are the patients, what are they getting diagnosed for today, to what extent, so what is the volume, which are the providers that are billing for certain procedures, a lot of the data we have. And the second bucket we have is directory data, which even to this day, there's not necessarily one source of truth for understanding what does a total universe look like of providers and payers. So we have that data in terms of every physician group, a physician group, clinic, hospital, health system, every payer. We also have things like affiliations. So one doctor might be affiliated with multiple groups or even a hospital. So that's a very messy data set. And we've done a lot of work getting those affiliations mapped between the individual practitioner to the group, to the hospital, to the health system and IDN. And then finally, what we also have is a big data set of population health. So this is spanning across demographic, disease state, social risk factors, social determinants of health. So there's a lot of this foundational data we have. And I think how we're different is we're not necessarily reselling that data to a digital health or med device company. What we're actually trying to do is build the right types of insights that are very particular to that customer. So let me give you an example. So if I'm a med device company and let's say, I have a surgical device for on the cardiology side, right? I want to know where are those cardiac surgeries happening today? Who are those doctors? Who are they affiliated with? What does my market look like? So a lot of those questions are very, very specific. So we can dive into the specific diagnosis codes. Let's say who are the patients who currently have cardiology conditions, who are getting cardiac procedures, and associate them with those right doctors and provider groups, and then really build out those insights that are very specific. So that's kind of how we differentiate. It's like we're not necessarily reselling a giant volume of data. It's really looking at building those sales insights that our customers can then take and actually deploy, right? Like, hey, we should target XYZ
Yeah.
practitioner. We should go after this state because we see, or this county, because we see there's a large volume of procedures. So that's kind of how we help. And yeah, I'm happy to go into any more
Yeah, and
detail.
I could see that you could actually help big companies as well with them spinning out a new division or new, you know, they have a thesis, and you know, I know as big as these good big companies are, they still just don't have enough focus. The enemy of their bigness is, so anyway, I know it's more of companies targeting those industries, but it seems like your data is real, it's powerful, it's multi-factor. The thing that I was curious, are you gonna, is this like a SaaS thing, or is it going to be, is it like a platform that they log into with this and you just gonna tier based on what they want to play with? How do they interface it? Because do they need like a data scientist? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, yeah, there's a few components to that. We do have a web-based platform, so typically our customers are able to get licenses to that platform, log in, and they'll see kind of views of the data that are very specific to them, like I gave you that example. Um, and so that's one piece of it. There are also additional value add insights that we're able to build that maybe a little bit beyond what the platform has. So if it's very specific to a given customer, they want to understand, let's say, claims denial trends. And again, using that as an example, that those are insights that we can build that are off platform and deliver it in a way that's easily ingested, like a Google Sheets or something. So that's another kind of piece to our offering. And then we also have, we make it a point to be very hands-on as an early stage company with our customers. We do biweekly check-ins, and we have a shared Slack channel whenever, Slack is being used by our partners or customers. And so we package all of that into, a subscription model. So it's access to the data, the platform, the insights, and the customer success, so the team essentially. And that's typically done at a yearly level.
Yeah, I love what I'm hearing, because so much of the problem is you can't blame, like I play pickleball, you can't blame your loss on your partner, right? So you can't blame your loss on your client, right? So what I'm hearing is a lot of insights that you've worked on with customer discovery, what's not working to speed up that blockage, right? Because I know in business, unfortunately, so much of the onboarding, so I'm hearing you really have different levels to help that streamline. So I think that's really great. You're really doing the product in a great way to make it accessible. So I just love how so many products just don't get it right, and I feel like that's from a lot of evolution with that, working with the customer. I'm probably sure there's it didn't just come out of like, let's do this.
Totally. Yeah. It was definitely a learning process, understanding what customer needs are. And oftentimes, like you said, even you touched on this in your earlier question, like, do we need a data scientist? Right. And I think our answer, should be with our customers is no. It's like, we're able to get you insights that you can act on. Right. And so to get to that point, yeah, it requires definitely getting a tight feedback loop, making sure customers are engaged using the product. So a lot of those things evolved exactly like you said.
Well, tell me, as a founder, co-founder, always be raising. A little that I know is, as that's a big thing. You've raised, I guess it's been about almost a year or last, so where are you on that? If, any venture investors, obviously you have that as a big thing. Of course, customers, if X user wants to, partner with, share a little bit on both parts, like the raising and then also the ideal customer out there, just help them know how they can talk with you.
Totally. Yeah. So I can touch on the fundraising side of things. Yeah, we did go through our first venture round and we closed that last year. So that was definitely very validating in a tough macroeconomic environment. So we feel definitely very fortunate to have to be after that point of having closed a round. And yeah, we have a great group of investors, a few different venture funds, and a handful of value add angel investors as well. For the time being, we're not necessarily focused on raising any more capital. I would say we want to get to certain milestones from a product and growth standpoint before we go out for a next raise. But like you said, once you're in that growth stage, capital management does always take a big priority. So understanding how our current runway will kind of play out over the next year or two, and that'll kind of dictate when and if and when we want to go out and raise again. But right now we've been very much heads down, focused on building in many ways the product, our customer base, the team. So yeah. And then the
Yeah.
second part of your question, which I can touch on, right now we're going after, I would say, mostly SMB and mid-market digital health and med device companies. And these are typically companies that, are working with a specific patient population, are really interested in utilizing data and insights for their commercial strategy, specifically touching on claims, providers, patients, the data that I mentioned. And so, yeah, if there's any companies like that which fit the bill, I would definitely encourage those listening to go check out our website, bonfireanalytics.com, or even our LinkedIn page. We do post a lot of, sort of updates on the business, and also some, interesting thoughts on healthcare sales. And yeah, if there's any interest in chatting with one of us on the team, there's a way to do that on the website, or even directly with me. My email is Vinay@bonfireanalytics.com.
Cool. What do you mean by mid-market? Help me out.
Yeah, sure. So mid-market, I think depending on the industry, there's different segmentations of like, SMB, which is like small to mid-size, and then mid-market. So we kind of look at this based on a few different factors. One is like revenue. I think revenue is obviously one of the big kind of benchmarks. So an SMB company might be doing, like, let's call it, 1 to 5 million in revenue, or something in that range. Mid-market would be 5 to 50, right, or beyond that. And the other big thing is, I would say, for mid-market companies, they've already built out a sales infrastructure. So there's like a VP of sales, there's territory managers, there's a lot of sales reps on the ground, or SDRs, that sort of thing. And then SMB, it might sometimes be the founder who's still doing a lot of the selling, or there might be a director of sales who's boots on the ground selling. So there's a difference in the sort of team and the hierarchy at those different segments of the market. Yeah.
That's very helpful. It really is. I'm so glad we connected. I'm glad you came on. I try for my audience. I don't have everyone on my show. I'm too inundated at this point. I wish I could have more and more founders, more and more conversations. I try to balance it, and I feel really privileged to have you on, because when we started talking prior to you coming on, and learning more about your partners, kind of your story, I think it really says a lot. The fact that you worked at Roundtrip, and are they not a customer of yours, right?
They are a customer of ours. That's correct.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. That really does. And you have some really good customers. It's on your website, so if it wasn't, I wouldn't say it. I feel like, do you want to share a little more about some of that? I think that would help too. I think it could be helpful as we kind of come in towards the end of our little time together.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to touch on some of the customers we work with. Yeah, Roundtrip, that was a cool kind of story that came full circle for me. Is a former employer of mine and now being a customer. We also work with a few other companies. So one is, they're called Point Designs. So they're a mid-market prosthetic device company. So they sell prosthetics to hand surgeons, or orthotists, prosthetists. So that's one of them. And then another one I would say is a company called Claricare. They're also on our website. They are in the wound care space. So they have a wound care solution where they work with independent wound care practitioners and wound care clinics, and they're again using our both Point Designs, Roundtrip. I should say all three of them, Point Designs, Roundtrip, and Claricare, have been able to use our data and insights to understand the market in a better way, in a more detailed way, and also reach the ideal prospects that I also mentioned. For Roundtrip, it's hospitals. For Point Designs, it's hand surgeons, prosthetists. For Claricare, it's wound care clinics. So it's different use cases, but they've all been able to use our data insights to get to that ideal prospect better. So we've been really lucky to work with brands like them, and we're certainly looking for more partners to work with. So yeah, appreciate you bringing that up, Michael.
Yeah, cool. what would a sales team do prior to you? I mean, all the different, I
Yeah.
don't, what would they be going through prior to this?
Yeah. So I would say I've heard a mix of things, right? One is they might not have any, necessarily any data tool that they're using. I've even heard things like we were Google searching for doctors and trying to find contact information. So that's one example. They might be using, some of these, like I mentioned, more industry agnostic sales tools like ZoomInfo or LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So these are some larger tools, and again, they're very effective in.
Horrible. I can say from my experience, like both of those, like Sales Navigator and LinkedIn,
Yeah,
is horrible for this kind of granularity. And I've used it. I'm gonna say I'm a former, and I'm not doing this, but I'm just saying, just
yeah.
adding, and I'll stop. Go ahead.
No. I think I appreciate that. I think what I meant to say was there. I think those tools are effective in certain industries, but I think their focus isn't on healthcare. And I think that's why the experience that you had, that I had, trying to use it in healthcare, yeah, it's not as ideal as it could be. And I think that's kind of why we've focused, with our background in healthcare and knowing the pain points here. But yeah, I mean, I'd even love to learn more about like what your experience was since you've
Well,
had.
I will share with you on it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
doctors, physician provider groups are busy providing care. They're not putting a LinkedIn profile and they're not optimizing their LinkedIn experience. Some, if they're on the digital healthcare space, but if you're a traditional provider, my gosh, go to their website and just see their website, right? I mean, so anyway, when I think of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, is good. I hate to say it, it's almost good if you don't know who your target customer is,
mm,
and that's pretty bad. And you're dealing with companies who know who they want to go after. I mean, basically, right?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a fair way to say it. I think like LinkedIn, it gives you a lot of volume. Similarly with ZoomInfo, but the kind of outreach it incentivizes in healthcare, at least, would be more the spray and pray,
Mm-hmm.
um, rather
Mm-hmm.
than being targeted. And I think that's not, again, like it's just not a core focus for those kinds of companies. But for us, it's very much like, okay, can you get into the claims? Can you get into the patient population? Can you get into details on the provider? Right. So those are business questions that we can help answer
Yeah.
that these other tools aren't focusing on.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful when you share those different clients of yours. I mean, we're talking prosthetic, wound care, and prosthetics. So wound care, little
Yeah.
I know, is very specific. Whether you're dealing with an endocrinologist or nephrologist or practice or groups. I mean, that's a really, a very very specialized. And some of these treatments can be very expensive. And I don't know the company you're working with helping, but little I know enough in healthcare to be deadly. So I've been in healthcare for 15 plus years as a social worker. I ran my
Wow.
own care management company.
Wow.
And so and I have all these people like you, super smart on my show. So I feel very fortunate that I just soak it up and learn all the time. I have people on. So, I am really glad to have you on. And is there anything else you feel like we should talk about as you're here? We still have a few more minutes.
No, I mean, I think we touched on a lot. Again, thank you for having me on. It was a real pleasure, Michael. And I know that we'll be running it back in no time. Meeting up at Health, and looking forward to further sessions like this. But no, I think we covered a lot of ground here, so I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I'm super glad too. And I know we've talked and you're going to be at Health. So we will definitely be meeting each other, seeing each other in Health, and love to just maybe just 2 minutes. What are you excited about Health? I think that would be as we're wrapping it up.
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of what I'm excited for, I would say generally the health. I would say Health and Vive. Both those are the two conferences that for us that we focus on, just given the emphasis on healthcare, health tech, and also a lot of our sort of like core areas that we are working with. Our attendees, right? So I'm excited to just generally meet other healthcare innovators. Understand more about the digital health and med device landscape. I'm personally also interested to hear more about like how AI has been, innovating, or AI has been used for innovations in healthcare to date, and what that looks like over the next 3, 5, 7 years. So I think there's a lot to look forward to, but generally, I think it's, as it comes down to it, for me, it's always about the people, and I am just really, really, pumped to meet a lot of the exciting healthcare innovators and sales leaders at Health.
Well, while we're here, I definitely want to invite you. We're going to be doing some broadcasting on looking for really super cool founders like yourself. So I hope you can come and, sit in our, not a hot seat, just a fun seat while we're doing some broadcasting there. I hope you can join us at Health.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invite. And I would, again, be honored to join that panel. And yeah, looking forward to it. I think it'll be a fun time, especially with, I think you mentioned you might be doing it with other folks on the panel too. So I'm excited to meet them as well. So yeah, it'll be a great time.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, until next time, friends, hope you can join us on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. It's been great having you.